सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। We are reading from the book Meditation and Spiritual Life by Swami Yatiswarananda. We are in the chapter 27, from the unreal to the real, starting the section, the nature of the seer. The principle of egoism is called jiva. Three things are necessary to constitute jivahood: the internal organ or mind, antakarana, the I consciousness, and the reflection of Brahman in the mind called chidabhasa. All the three together constitute the jiva. Of these, the presence of the internal organ is the basic element. This in turn is a special product of the three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas, which constitute maya. It is this internal organ which gives rise to I consciousness and reflects the light of Brahman. The reflected light along with the I consciousness makes up the jiva. When the reflector or the internal organ is destroyed with the help of higher knowledge, what happens to the reflection? It was Brahman that was originally reflected, and in the absence of the reflector, the reflection remains non-different from Brahman. In other words, jiva and Brahman are one when the gunas are transcended. As long as the reflector is there, the jiva is present. It is limited, bound. But when the reflector vanishes, there remains Brahman alone, for which there is neither limitation nor bondage. It is the infinite, the absolute, the one without a second. Of course, this is a very high standpoint, the highest standpoint ever reached by mankind anywhere in the world. It is far away from the reach of most of us for the present, and it may take several years of birth to attain it. What then must be our immediate concern? Our immediate problem should be to separate the reflection from the reflected. Brahman shines through the mind, but we are so preoccupied with the various modifications of the mind, that is, thoughts, that we do not really understand the light that shines through it. We see this reflected light only when the mind is purified and remains free from modifications. Then we see the light distinct from thoughts. Not only that, we also attain the realization that this reflected light is really a part of the infinite divine light. First of all, however, we must get some glimpses of our own higher self. The question of the infinite comes later on. The inner light. Intuition, the power of direct vision, lies dormant in us. It should be regained. Through that alone comes the glimpses of higher realities. How to develop this higher power of intuition? Just watch how you enter into sleep and how you get out of it. You'll find at first the sense organs are withdrawn back into the mind. Then the thoughts disappear, and you will have just a vague I consciousness. Finally, this I merges into deep sleep. When you wake up, the reverse process happens. At first, the I consciousness emerges, and then this gets connected to the thoughts which arise in the mind and the objects around. Just after waking up, there is a shadowy intermediate period when you retain pure I consciousness for a second. At that point, the world appears like a shadow. It has not yet acquired objective reality for us. Something of this pure awareness should be attained consciously during our waking hours. That is the real task before the aspirant. We should attain to that plane where the dividing line between light and darkness is very thin. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, King Janaka questions the venerable sage Yajnavalkya. What serves as the light for man? The sage replies that it is the light of the sun. It is by the light of the sun that he sits, goes out, works and comes back. When the sun has set, what serves as the light? The moon. When there is no moon, the fire. When there is no fire, the sound. When the sound is also hushed, questioning like this, he reaches back to his own self. This is from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, mantras 4.3.2 to 4.3.7. It is the mind that recognizes the external objects, but behind the mind stands the luminous self, with the light of which we dream objects within. Think about that light with which we dream objects within. Think about that light which reveals the dream objects. What is that light? It is the Atman, the self itself. The self is self-luminous. It reveals itself. Nothing can reveal it. It reveals other objects, external things and internal mental images. When the objects vanish, the self-luminous Atman alone shines. Between the two states of waking and deep sleep, we remain for a second or so as this pure self. The task is to attain it permanently during the waking hours. Then it is never lost. How to awaken intuition? By making the best use of our threefold faculties of intellect, feeling, and will, we develop the forgotten faculty of intuition in us. First of all, these faculties are to be purified. Purification is a difficult task. It takes a long time. The impressions, samskaras of previous experiences are there, lying hidden. It takes time to remove them. Some of these have to be just erased by an effort of the will. Some are to be restrained with the help of other impressions. Some others are to be changed into other forms. The energy stored as impressions in the mind is to be directed into higher channels. This is called sublimation. Here comes the need for karma yoga. By just thinking you have overcome hatred, you do not overcome it. You must put the idea into practice, show it in your life. Ideals must be converted into actions. The results of good actions are again stored as good samskaras. These purify the mind and strengthen it. Some of the samskaras can be modified or overcome through regular japa and meditation. Meditation also helps in coordinating and integrating the various faculties. When purification, integration, and concentration of the three faculties of feeling, willing, and thinking are achieved, the faculty of intuition is discovered. The light of the Atman shines forth, at first in the form of flashes, but later on as a steady beam. Then we find that the self as jiva operates through the mind, through the sense organs, through the physical body. In his famous hymn to Dakshinamurti as Guru, Sri Shankara makes this idea clear. Just as the rays of the light hidden in a pot with a number of holes emanate from those holes, so the self manifests itself to the eyes and other sense organs, giving rise to the notion, quote, I know, unquote. Every object shines, that is known, after the self manifests it. I bow down to the teacher who is known as Dakshinamurti, who is none other than the Supreme Self. So this is Dakshinamurti Stotram, verse number 4. Nana Chidra Ghatodharisthatamaha Deepa Prabhabhaswaram Jnanayasya tu Chakshuradikarana Dvara Bahispandate Janamiti Tameva Bhantam Anubhatye Tat Samastan Jagate Tasmai Shri Gurumurtaye Nama Idam Shri Dakshinamurtaye. When we get this experience, we will be able to separate the instruments from the real self. Then what we had been previously calling the self appears to be the false self. The false self is an aggregate of body, mind, and senses. The real self stands behind all these, illuminating and enlivening them. Our present task is to discover this luminous self manifesting itself through us. That is our immediate goal. The ultimate goal, of course, is to merge this little self in the infinite supreme self of Brahman. But that problem does not arise now. Let us begin from where we are and move forward, purifying ourselves through our daily japa, meditation, studies, and selfless discharging of duties. Three types of bodies. The gross body is made up of gross matter. It is this that undergoes birth and death. As distinct from this gross body, we all have a subtle body and a causal body. When the gross body falls, the remaining two bodies still form a combination. To what body do the senses belong? If by the senses we mean the physical organs of perception, like the external eye, the ear, etc., then they belong to the gross body. But if by the senses we mean the subtle power of which the eye and the outer organs are but instruments, then they belong to the subtle body. The causal body forms the support of even the subtle body. When the physical body falls off, nothing is ended. The soul, with all its passions and desires, is still as bound as it was at the time of the existence of the gross body. So one should get rid of them all before one dies. Death is no solution because, as I said, nothing is ended with death. It makes us neither better nor less ignorant. We must realize that principle which is beyond life and death. There is a certain power in us which is distinct from the eye but manifests through the eye, distinct from the ear but manifests through the ear, distinct from the mind but manifests through the mind. And the same power manifests itself in a similar way through the other different instruments or sense organs. In deep sleep, the senses and the mind are withdrawn into the causal body, but when one returns to consciousness, one comes back with all one's desires and cravings and passions, all one's lust and anger and hatred, and nothing has been gained. Herein lies the great difference between spiritual consciousness and deep sleep, between samadhi and deep sleep. When the vision of truth comes, it burns away all our desires and passions. If a fool enters samadhi, he comes back an illumined man. But then, you see, a fool cannot enter samadhi. According to one classification, we have 3 bodies, and according to another, we have 5 sheets. Ordinarily, we feel the gross body so much that we lose all feeling for the subtle and the causal bodies. Is it possible to form an idea of the different bodies that each human being possesses? Yes, it is possible if we become really introspective and stop the outgoing tendencies of our mind by turning and directing it inwards. As long as the principle of life is connected with the body, every atom is made alive by it. In the body, we come in touch with force, and force means energy, and this means vibration. When we proceed further, we come in touch with another kind of force or vibration, namely our thoughts and emotions. We thus find that our personality is, as it were, a combination of vibrations. Sometimes very disturbing thoughts arise in the mind, and then we become something like a seething mass of vibrations in which this body of ours is placed. Proceeding further, if we are able to calm the mind, we feel our consciousness, not pure consciousness of course, but a sort of mixed consciousness into which these indefinite feelings and emotions merge, a definite consciousness with I as the predominant factor. This we may call the consciousness of the agent, as distinct from the consciousness of the instrument, that is the mind and senses. This is the empirical self, called Taijasa. And as distinct from this agent, there is a pure consciousness, that is pure individualized consciousness, that manifests itself through all forms of knowledge and all forms of sensation. The Mandukya Upanishad calls it the Prajna. This is from Mandukya Upanishad, mantras 4 and 5. The individual and the cosmos. Having come to the individualized consciousness, one can find that this individualized consciousness is a part of the infinite, immutable consciousness of Brahman. But for all this, we must become introspective and must lead a life of reflection and thought. There are some who try to come in touch with the cosmic consciousness only after having reached individualized consciousness, while others try to think of the cosmic at all times and at all stages, for the personality is in contact with the cosmos at various levels. If I try to think of the real nature of my body, I find that it is part of an unlimited ocean of matter, just as the bodies of all others are. When from the gross body I come to the body made of prana or vital force, I feel that this vital energy in me is part of the cosmic vital energy. Having come to my emotions and feelings, I find that my emotions and feelings are part of the cosmic emotions and feelings. In the same way, my consciousness is part of the cosmic consciousness, of which the mind and the senses are instruments. And finally, I realize that my pure individualized consciousness is part of pure infinite consciousness of Brahma. It is the supreme consciousness that stands behind all our actions and thoughts, giving reality to them all. So our personality is a complex which is to be analyzed by passing from the grosser aspects to subtler and subtler ones. Sometimes, if one is really introspective, then one can feel one has become a mass of thoughts, as if one's body were floating in a pool of thoughts. Ordinarily, we are so identified with the body and take such an exterior view of it that we find it very hard even to imagine that it is made of nothing but flesh and bone. It is all a question of becoming more sensitive and ceasing to be so very impervious to self-analysis. We must develop a higher sensibility in order to become aware of all these subtler aspects. If we develop a higher sensibility, we can reduce our personalities to a combination of thoughts, to a bundle of vrittis. And thought, after all, is nothing but subtle matter and belongs to the phenomenon alone, never to the noumenon or the ultimate reality. In the beginning, our individuality is like a red-hot iron ball in which the iron ball and the red light seem to be inseparable, but they can be separated. They are not really one. Sometimes one may even feel the existence of this pure consciousness as distinct from the body. Sometimes when one is thrown into a very elevated state, one may feel oneself to be distinct from the body and the mind. All our emotions and feelings are based on the reality of the body. After a spiritual experience, we continue to have relationships and emotions and feelings, but they are no longer connected with the body. Even when we rise above body consciousness, we are connected with one another as parts of the whole, and this relationship is far closer than between husbands and wives, that of parents and children, and that of brothers and sisters and friends. With one's spiritual progress, one develops more and more of a kind of mental X-ray, which is so necessary for clear analysis. Then we learn to see through things and relations and no longer allow ourselves to be deceived by our unruly mind. One should try to direct this mental X-ray to oneself and find out one's true nature. A true cosmic sense always loosens our possessive hold on other people. But what we usually do is to make use of everybody else for bringing enjoyment to us, either in a gross or in a subtle form. All our misery, frustrations, disappointments arise from this. By following the right path of spiritual practice and scrupulously sticking to it whatever happens, it is possible for the soul to rid itself of the limiting adjuncts, to attain to the self and realize its eternal relationship with the universal self. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, if one analyzes oneself, one does not find any such thing as I. Take an onion, for instance. First of all, you peel off the red outer skin. Then you find thick white skins. Peel this one after another, and you won't find anything inside. This is from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, translated by Swami Nikhilananda, published in 1974, page 78. One may retain one's individual consciousness and yet come in touch with cosmic consciousness. And unless one does that, there is no question of ever reaching the state of transcendental consciousness. One must proceed step by step towards the highest realization. Mere talking of the absolute won't do. Mere soaring to wonderful speculations and imaginations won't do. There should be conscious attempts at outgrowing our present state. Then, as we advance, conflicts will cease on the lower plane, but there will be conflicts on a higher plane. Struggles and conflicts will continue until we reach the highest plane. When we assign to all phenomena a reality of second or third order, we can remain unaffected by the phenomenal world. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om